We are in the amazing country of Morocco. This is country number 15 for us, and it has been a fantastic 3 weeks travelling around this beautiful country.
We've loved being here, but before we came here, we were a little concerned about how easy it might be to travel independently throughout Morocco. There's a lot of information out there about whether Morocco is safe, how difficult it is to travel here, and so on. So we really contemplated perhaps actually doing a guided tour of Morocco. Now, it's not our usual style of travel, and we opted not to do that. So what we want to do in this video is take you through the pros and cons of traveling independently versus doing a tour, and also compare the cost differences.
To start with, we'll take you through all of the boring stuff, the administration, the accommodation, transport, all of those bits and pieces. So if you want to skip ahead, we're going to highlight some of the best places to visit in Morocco, but I think that it's important just to talk about some of those other fundamentals in planning your trip to Morocco. Now, first, let's have a chat about how we got here to Morocco. We've been traveling through Portugal for the last few weeks, and we decided to head through Spain to a port city called Algeciras, which provides an option for getting across to Morocco.
So there's an important thing to know here. From that Algeciras area, there's two ways to get to Morocco. You can take a ferry direct from Algeciras into a place called Tangier Med. Tangier Med's about 30 to 40 minutes outside of the city of Tangier, and it's a smaller, less used port, probably more commercial port. There's another town nearby called Tarifa in Spain, where you get the ferry direct into the main Tangier port. So that's what we chose to do. We nearly made the mistake of booking the ticket direct from Algeciras because it looked really convenient. We were actually staying there. But fortunately, the lovely lady that ran the hotel that we were staying in made us aware of that difference.
So the cost of booking a ticket to get across on the ferry is around about €80. It was actually a really good ferry ride. The key trick, though, is that you can do a lot of your in-processing for customs and immigration on board the ferry, but you've got to line up for it. Now, there are a couple of other quick traps, if you like, for new players coming into Morocco. They do have some interesting laws around things like drones, and we only realised that on the morning of our travel. And so poor old Dougie the drone had to be packed up in a postage bag and sent forward to our next destination in Eastern Europe. I'm not sure we'll see Dougie again, but here's hoping.
He hasn't arrived yet, though. A few weeks later, and he still hasn't arrived to the hotel that we posted it to. So let's hope that we do have a reunion with Dougie soon.
The next thing that's worth having a chat about is how we got around in Morocco, and there are lots of transportation options that are open to you.
We had to make a few decisions, and sometimes quite difficult decisions around this. We used a variety of methods of transport. We used buses between major cities, and then we actually rented a car for the more remote parts of Morocco, because there are actually a couple of places that we were going to that buses didn't go that far, so we did need to rent a car. We were fortunate enough, again, over breakfast one day, just having a general conversation with another guest at the hotel we were at, to get a really good referral for a car hire place that brought the car to you. We could drop it off in a different city, and they managed all of that really easily and efficiently for us, actually.
Everything was arranged through WhatsApp, so it made it a really, really convenient means of travelling around some areas of Morocco that otherwise we might not have been able to get to. I will say, though, the buses here in Morocco were great.
Yeah, we had really good experience on the buses. They were, again, really efficient, air-conditioned, turned up on time, plenty of options, cheap. I would highly recommend the buses to get you to the places that you can go.
What about the trains?
We took one train trip in Morocco, and it was fine, but you can tell the fact that I said fine means it wasn't great. It was perfectly comfortable, and it was a little hot. The air conditioning didn't work very well. From that experience, it was more expensive than the bus. I did look at getting a bus between those two cities, but we chose to do the train. It was actually double the price, the train. Double the price still isn't expensive, but you know, it all counts. And I guess based on our experience, we'd probably say the buses were definitely better than the trains. Although I have heard that there is a high-speed train network between a few major cities. We didn't use that, so we can't comment on that. That might be better than what we experienced.
Now let's just have a little bit of a chat about driving around in Morocco. There were some things that worried me about us doing a self-drive through Morocco. First of which were the police. And I've got to be honest, we had no problems with the police whatsoever.
When we were on the buses, we noticed that every town that you come into or pass through, there is a police presence as you enter the town, and they were stopping cars, checking paperwork, etc. And again, we'd read some blogs that said, you know, you might have to pay some fines as you're entering towns and so on and so forth. So we were a little bit concerned about that. We can't control those kind of things. But we had no issues whatsoever. We would get just waved through every time. They didn't stop us once.
No.
We must have honest faces.
But I will say, I think sometimes you make your own luck as well. We were warned that the speed limits in Morocco are very stringently applied. And so we were very conservative with our speed, but we were really careful to make sure that we were maintaining the correct speed. And also when we went through the checkpoints, we made sure that we stopped and got waved through. There wasn't any confusion. So Tracy did most of the driving here in Morocco, as Tracy is wont to do. She loves driving. Sand and the Atlas Mountains.
The roads in the more remote desert parts of Morocco, the road quality was good wherever we went actually. All the roads were good quality. But the roads in the desert parts, they literally have like a sand verge. So you really have to be careful not to veer off the side, because we had, again, read that if you just veer off onto the verge, it might look almost like, almost just like dirt, but it's actually kind of soft sand. So you can get bogged really easily. So you do have to be careful about that. And then we drove over the Atlas Mountains, which was stunning, but and safe. Again, really good road quality, no problems there. But it is, you know, there's lots of switchbacks, so you do have to obviously be careful. Moroccans are very comfortable with overtaking, near corners, around corners. It all seems to work out. Nobody seems to panic and things work out, but just something to be aware of.
In terms of accommodation here in Morocco, again, we found that really, really easy to get around. We normally use booking.com. We throw in a few filters, which in some cases includes a swimming pool. But all of the places that we stayed, most probably bar one, were really, really good and very well priced.
Yeah, good quality, good value. They always included breakfast. So that again saves you money during the day. So yeah, we're really happy with the accommodation. We did a range of things, some traditional riads, which is a traditional Moroccan, you know, courtyard style home that have been turned into hotels. And they were always really, really stunning visually, right? Beautiful tiles and fountains and, you know, beautiful ornate doorways and things, really beautiful to look at. And then we also did some Western style hotels. For example, at the moment, we are sitting in the garden of the Ibis Hotel. So a range of things here, but all really good value.
The thing that really surprised me about the accommodation was that from the outside, most of the buildings are very nondescript. They're very red brick clay. But then as soon as you walk through the door, it opens into this oasis of tiles, mosaics, water features, silks. It's absolutely amazing.
There is a lot of really beautiful things to see in Morocco. The colours and the textures and the patterns of things is really out of this world.
And in terms of the Flying Finnies budget, we were able to maintain a pretty good lifestyle at a relatively inexpensive cost. One of the key reasons why I wanted to come to Morocco was to experience North African food, and I tell you, we have done that in droves. The tagines and the couscous here is amazing, as you would expect. It does change from area to area, and we certainly didn't regret coming here to sample some of the food.
One of the highlights of the trip for me was visiting the Bacha Coffee House yesterday in Marrakesh. It is the most beautiful little coffee house, and actually had really fantastic coffee there. It's like walking into 1920s Raffles almost, isn't it? It's stunning, and there's beautiful palms everywhere, and there is like, I think there's 100 or so different types of coffee that you can sample. That was a little overwhelming trying to choose, but we had a really nice afternoon tea there actually.
The other thing that you've got to do whilst you're here in Morocco when we're talking about food is taking advantage of some of the rooftop terraces that you'll find littered throughout all of the cities that you visit. And some of the restaurants that we went to, you could see the sun going down of an evening from atop the rooftop terrace, enjoying some fantastic food and also maybe a little bit of entertainment as well. Now, the places that we went to, we generally spent a couple of days in each location.
Now, when we were trying to decide where to go in Morocco, I based our itinerary around a tour that I was looking to book us on. So we pretty much followed the route that the tour was going to go on. And it just gave us a bit of a focus on sort of a logical way to approach travelling through this really quite large country. So we started in Tangier, which is obviously where the ferry dropped us into. And that was a really, really great introduction to this country. It's a port city. It's really lively. It's got a really lovely but quite small Medina, which is the old part of the city. So quite manageable to get around. And because it is quite very close to Spain, it has a lot of tourists that come in. So it was almost like a soft introduction to us for Morocco.
It's a beautiful city. It's a walled city. So you get a really nice introduction to the historical aspect of Morocco, but it's also quite beautiful. There's a boardwalk that runs around the seaside. We walked all the way through the Kasbah, and no one is trying to sell you anything necessarily. It's a very, very soft sell culture, which we also really appreciated.
Yeah, we have not been hassled here at all, really. Again, that's another thing that I think is a big misconception out there about Morocco. We came thinking that it was going to be a bit of a hustle culture where people were going to follow us down the streets and try and sell us things and try and take us on unofficial tours and guide us and then ask for money. You've heard it all before from other people probably. We did not experience that at all. And we met some other travellers while we were here who had the same experience from us. So we have found the Moroccan people all over the country really hospitable, really respectful, helpful, lovely, really lovely, a great experience. Our second stop after Tangier was Chefchaouen, which is the blue city. Now, you've probably seen lots of footage and photos on social media of this really gorgeous, gorgeous place. It didn't feel as genuine as Tangier in the sense that it really is a tourist town, but it's absolutely stunning. Like, you've really never seen anything like it. It's set at the base of these stunningly high, sort of red-brown mountains. There's a really stunning Spanish mosque that you can walk up to kind of halfway up the mountain that gives you a great overview of the city. We went into the Kasbah there as well, and that was really stunning. We hadn't read anything about that online, and we just kind of stumbled across it in the main square, and we were really pleased we paid the entrance fee to go in there. That was beautiful.
There was a beautiful garden in the middle of it that was really quite unexpected. But the real beauty of Chefchaouen, apart from the blue walls, is an amazing waterfall that runs down through the middle of the city itself. The other thing about Chefchaouen is if you are arriving by bus, the climb to the old town is quite significant. So you better put your walking shoes on for that one.
I was not a happy camper that day. It was stinking hot. Grumpy, grumpy, grumpy up the hill, wasn't I? Graham kept offering to carry my pack for me, but I was determined that I was not going to at least let him do that. So I had to save some of my pride. So take a taxi up the hill is what we would say.
Our first experience of a major city here in Morocco was in Fez. Now, again, we took a bus from Chefchaouen through to Fez. We stayed in the Medina, and all I can say about the Medina is that it is really complex.
Complex and can be a little overwhelming and a little bit, not scary, but you have to be really cautious. There are over 9,500 streets or alleyways within this Medina. So it's very easy to obviously get disorientated and lost. And this is one place again where we were warned actually by the locals, by the owner of the hotel, not to accept random offers of help from people, because apparently it's a known scam where they will offer to guide you out of the Medina, but actually do the opposite, guide you further in, get you more confused, and then you have to pay them a fee to get you out again. So we did choose to do a guided tour of the Medina, which actually was a really good decision.
Travelling around the Medina with a guide just took all of the concern and heartache out of going and experiencing some areas that I'm not sure that we could have got to on our own.
Definitely, we would not have got down those little streets by ourselves. The downside of doing a tour, as always, is that there's a more commercial element to it. So we did get taken into a few places where we were encouraged to buy things from the locals, but again, they were really respectful. We made it really clear at the beginning of the tour that we don't buy souvenirs. So we went in, we listened to their pitch, and saw we did see some beautiful carpets though. I was tempted to buy a carpet. And I got a little face massage from that lady selling the natural beauty products. The tanneries are a must see when you're in Fez. It's one of the things that they're very famous for. But it is a bit overwhelming. The scent of kind of that raw leather being processed is confronting. They very kindly give you a sprig of, not a sprig, but like a bunch of mint when you enter the tanneries to help mask the scent. And that mint stayed very firmly attached to below my nose. With all that additional pleasant smell, the scent of the tannery was still quite overwhelming, but fascinating to see, really interesting to see that.
Fez was where we picked up our car and headed further down south to an area called Merzouga. And the key attraction down there is, of course, the Sahara Desert.
We saw lots of the Sahara Desert, but not in the way that we anticipated. We saw it, we tasted it, we felt it in our ears, I washed it out of my hair.
The Merzouga experience didn't quite work out as we were expecting. We were possibly looking at spending a night in a tent in the middle of the desert, but the weather at the time it wasn't going to let that happen.
We had a massive sandstorm while we were there that lasted for 24 to 36 hours. So really interesting to experience that, but it did mean that we didn't go on the camping trip into the desert. The camping trip still went ahead, or the camp was still open, and the owner of our hotel again said, yes, it's fine to go, but we just decided it wasn't going to be very pleasant, so there really wasn't much point in that. So I was really glad to see it. We experienced the desert in a different way. We didn't get to stay in the actual desert. We stayed right beside the desert, so we could see the dunes from the lovely hotel that we were in, so that was really nice. And we did a tour in a four-wheel drive through the desert, so we got to do a bit of driving over sand dunes and seeing other parts of the town. So yeah, I feel like we did it, but we might need to go back one day and actually stay in the desert.
So fantastic four-wheel drive tour that took us through some of the historical parts of that area. It was occupied by the French and there were some old mining areas there, as well as a nomadic village that is still in operation today, and you can sit down and have a cup of tea there.
So they also took us to this oasis in town, which is an area where they kind of channel the water from the mountains into what is effectively a community garden. Each family in town has a plot of land, and they literally open and close these little irrigation channels by mud for about an hour a day. Each plot gets about an hour's worth of water a day. So that was really interesting to see as well.
What surprised me was that the water comes directly out from the desert. And our guide was telling us that at times the water level out in the desert is only 15 centimetres below the dunes. And the water coming out from that was absolutely crystal clear.
The highlight of my time in Morocco was visiting Todra Gorge. It is stunning. There's just not enough words to describe really how beautiful this was.
We stayed on the outskirts of Todra Gorge, so it was a little bit of a drive to get in there. We were told to not only visit the main part of the gorge, but also to keep driving for about another 10 kilometres after the initial gorge itself. And I gather a lot of people see the beauty of the first part of the gorge and then stop there. It was beautiful, but for me, the real beauty of the gorge was continuing that drive through the rest of the gorge itself.
The walls of these rocks, mountains, whatever you want to call them, just coming up both sides, and the colours of the dirt and the stones out there is just, I'm going to say stunning again. I'm sorry to keep using that word, but it really was incredible.
When we drove back through the gorge, we also stopped off where a lot of the local families were just hanging out. The gorge itself was an escape from the heat, and just sitting there beside the river, dunking our feet in the water was magical.
It was lovely to see all the local families just out enjoying the afternoon, picnicking, paddling in the water, playing games, throwing rocks. It was really good. Lots of local dogs as well, just wandering around in the nice cool oasis there. So of course I enjoyed that.
It was definitely worth the investment of a night's accommodation in and around Todra Gorge to be able to see this stunning area.
I'm actually sorry we didn't stay 2 nights in that area. It was a beautiful town as well that we stayed in, but we got there late in the afternoon after a long day of driving, and we left reasonably early the next day to get to the next town, Ait Benhaddou.
For those who are fans of Game of Thrones, it was another movie set. It seemed you couldn't go anywhere in Morocco without it having been used as a movie set for something or other, whether it was Gladiator, Lawrence of Arabia, or Game of Thrones. So we spent one night. It was really great taking a wander through the city, but a lot of the locals would say get there first thing in the morning before all of the day trippers arrive. I think that's absolutely true, because in the afternoon it can get quite busy for a couple of hours. If you are staying in Ait Benhaddou, get up before dawn and go and have a look at the sun rising over the old town, which is absolutely spectacular.
That was one of the few days where I did get up before dawn. There was literally nobody else in that town when we went to do that. It was just us and another street dog following us.
When we left Ait Benhaddou, we had a beautiful drive through the Atlas Mountains and some of the switchbacks, which were in some places challenging, getting back to the city of Marrakesh where we dropped off our car.
Now, we didn't stay in Marrakesh this time. We just came back to drop off the car, and then we jumped straight on a bus to go to a town called Essaouira, which is on the coast, a really beautiful coastal town. We had some great beach days there and watched all the kite surfing. It's a big kite surfing place, so that was really great to watch them zipping up and down the coast at great speed.
But in terms of Essaouira, a beautiful walled city and a fantastic place to watch sunset from some of the amazing rooftop terraces and restaurants that are everywhere in the city, and reasonably priced too. A bit more laid back, a little bit more chill, a little bit more expat orientated.
Yeah, a little bit more Western style food, which I really enjoyed. Really good atmosphere. It's really well set up for tourists, big tourist town.
Our next bus trip was to a really surprising city for me. That was Casablanca.
It's famous for lots of reasons, Casablanca, and a lot of people obviously come here with thoughts of the, the famous Humphrey Bogart movie in their minds, but it's actually a really large commercial city. It's the largest city in Morocco. A lot of what we'd read said, if you need to skip a place, skip Casablanca. There's not a lot to do there. It's not all that interesting. We found the opposite. We were only there for 2 nights and 1 day, so we really only had 1 day to explore. But it is a big commercial city, but we really liked it. I felt like we really got to see how Moroccans live. It wasn't really set up for tourists. And we had a really good night out at a restaurant, some great food, great service, watched the sunset. Yeah, I liked it. I would recommend you go there if you've got time. Our last stop in Morocco was Marrakesh. Now, you cannot come to this country without going to Marrakesh. It's probably the most visited city in the country by tourists, and that's for a really good reason.
We spent around about 3 nights in Marrakesh, which gave us ample opportunity to sample some of the things in and around the city, not only the Medina, which is beautiful, but most probably a little bit touristy.
Yeah, it is really touristy. You don't see too many locals, although locals do live in the Medina. You just don't see them unless they're involved in tourist trade, I guess. Lots of shops selling lots of the same things over and over again, but it is really pretty. There's a unique style of architecture, I'd say, in Marrakesh. It's very sort of that pink red clay, which is really beautiful.
We also ventured out to some of the gardens around Marrakesh, almost like botanic gardens, and it was wonderful to spend, particularly on a hot day, a few hours wandering through the shade and really enjoying the greenery that was in the centre of the city.
One of the main attractions in Marrakesh is the Jam El Fanar Square. It's kind of the main square and market, and it's massive. It's just outside the Medina, and you can't help but go through it as you're coming into town. This place is just alive with activity at all times of the day and night. It's busy during the day, but it just gets busier and busier as the sun goes down.
One of the best things that you can do is venture up around sunset to one of the rooftop bars in and around the main square itself. Now, you do pay a little bit of a premium for drinks at sunset, but looking down onto the square to the mixture of dancers and hawkers that are down there, and the place, it's electric.
And snake charmers.
And
there were snake charmers and people with monkeys. One word of warning, you do have to be careful. There's obviously a lot of really interesting things to take photos of, but essentially, if you take a photo of something in that square, someone will approach you to pay them for money. So don't take a photo of the snake charmers unless you're prepared to pay a small fee for that. The highlights of Marrakesh for us were the beautiful architecture, that fabulous square, and the Bacha Coffee House, which we talked about earlier in the video.
And also making a couple of friends along the way.
Yeah, we met a really nice Australian couple, so if you're out there, hi!
So I guess the big question is, should you go it alone in your own travels around Morocco, or potentially use one of the packaged tours that are readily available if you want to do that?
The answer, as usual, is we would do it our own way because that's our preferred way of travelling. Having said that, the tour that I was looking at booking for us was actually really good value. It was around about the same amount per day as we spent on this tour. It was around $100 per person per day. Now that's Australian dollars.
But where we saved money was in all of the extra meals that we would have had to have purchased on one of those pre-packaged tours. And I think also the flexibility of deciding when you wanted to go somewhere and when you wanted to do it, it's always a great advantage.
But whatever you decide to do, whether it's a package tour or on your own, you definitely should go to Morocco. We highly recommend it as a country. We loved it. We had a great 3 weeks there. And now it is time to fly.
Time to fly.